Welcome, everybody. We're so glad you're here. I am Elizabeth Geis, the Director of College Counseling here at St. Andrews. I am joined by Chad Fulton, our Associate Director of College Counseling, and a host of college admissions officers who you will get to know over the next hour. But first things first, I really wanted to thank everybody for being here, whether you're here live or whether you're listening later. We are so grateful to have our college admissions officers on this panel tonight. They are going to help us navigate the current landscape of college admissions and shed a little light on some ways that you, especially if you're a ninth grader or a 10th grader or a parent listening in, might approach and think about this process of search and selection. To be mindful of everybody's time, you won't necessarily hear from every panelist for each question. They will chime in as they want to offer something that has not already been said, and that will allow us to cover more territory. Also, we're trying to focus this evening's discussion on some general topics that are not always related specifically to a given school that might be represented here. A lot of those details about individual schools will come out in their answers to the questions, so they're not off limits to our panelists, but we want to have them share information from their current experiences, from previous experience that will help you as students and families. And although we are all more accustomed to this way of gathering than we were in a pre-COVID time, a few housekeeping reminders. If you have trouble with technology, just try to log back in. If you don't log back in, it's being recorded, so you can listen to it later. If you have questions that come up, drop them in the Q&A, and we will either answer them live or we will type an answer to you. And for our families, just know that this, especially if you're a 9th and 10th grade family and student, this is just the beginning of so much more that we do here at St. Andrews in the way of college counseling. And you're really still just at the beginning of high school. There's so much more in front of you before you might make a decision to join a campus that's represented tonight or the thousands of other campuses around the world. So without further delay, we're going to let you get to know our guests in a minute. They bring a range of experiences and years in the field, but what they all share is a real commitment to you, to the students who go through this process, and to the dreams and the hopes that you have for your futures. And that's why we wanted to bring them to you, to remind you that they are humans who are reading your applications. Some of them are taking a break from that at this very moment. And to remind you that these are the faces that you are likely to meet over the next few years at school visits and at college fairs. They are people who have chosen to invest their lives in the promotion of higher education and all of its value, both the tangible parts and the intangible parts. And they are people who have a lot of wisdom to share with us both tonight from their current places of employment and their previous experiences. Like you, they are more than just their titles or their labels. They are their stories. And tonight gives us an opportunity to hear from them. So in a moment, I will hand things over to Chad Fulton. He will call on the panelists to introduce themselves. They will share their name. They will share a little bit about their current institution and any of their other previous experiences. They will share a little bit about other ways in which they're involved in their school communities. And then we're going to turn the tables on them. If you're a 9th and 10th grader or even 11th grader, you have not seen this question yet, but a question that seniors get asked a lot is, in 150 words or less, why is fill in the blank school a good fit for you? So we're going to have them tell you in 150 words or less why our guests, you parents and students, should consider their school. Okay, Chad, over to you.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. I'm going to call on the reps individually, and they're going to go through some of the things that Ms. Geis just talked about, and then answer the question in 150 words or less, why their institution. We're going to start out with Clayton.
Hey all, my name's Clayton Walker from Belmont University. I serve as the Associate Director here at Belmont. So that really means that I oversee freshman admissions to the university, but work specifically with students from Texas. And that's why I know Elizabeth and Chad well and get to work with students from St. Andrews. When I've been at Belmont for 6 4 years as a staff member, but did undergrad and grad school both at Belmont as well. So been around the block at Belmont for about 10 years now, which is crazy how quickly that has grown up. But a little bit about Belmont, if you're not familiar, Belmont is a medium-sized Christian university in Nashville, Tennessee. We're kind of known for the music business realm of things. We have really strong nursing programs as well in general business. Nashville is the hottest job market in the country right now. So students enjoy coming to Nashville and then stay in Nashville. So parents, 75% of our graduates end up sticking around in Nashville after they graduate. Really great opportunities for students from Belmont to stay in Nashville and get great job opportunities in a growing city. So that's a couple of reasons why you should consider Belmont. But the Christian values, Christ-centeredness of the university paired with that kind of small to medium size is a really great fit for some students. So it's great to be here tonight.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Clayton. Now we're going to turn it over to Erin from Colgate.
Hi, everyone. My name is Erin Millen. I'm an Associate Dean of Admission from Colgate University in Hamilton, New York. Hamilton, New York is a small village about an hour outside of Syracuse. We have about 3,800 people in Hamilton, and about 3,200 students go to Colgate. I'll say a little bit more about Colgate, but in terms of my role at the office, I work with students and schools and families in Texas, as well as Central New York. Beyond my role in the admission office, I serve as a member of a committee called Community Reads, where faculty, staff, and students, we read a lot of books. We present a list of possible texts for the first year students to read, but we really open it up and invite everyone to read the book together. So let's see, this is my third year serving on that committee. Some other things to know about Colgate. Again, we're small liberal arts, we're residential. We have 56 different majors, Division I athletics, a lot of spirit, small classes. There are so many reasons students come to Colgate. It's such a great fit for so many students.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Moving on, we're going to turn it over to Tony from Knox College.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tony Chandler, and I am the Associate Director of Texas Recruitment for Knox College. Knox is located in Galesburg, Illinois, which is kind of western central Illinois. And this is my, choke it out, 20th year in higher education. My background is kind of interesting. I worked for 10 years for a state university here in Texas. And I say here in Texas because I'm Dallas based, so I'm what's called a regional counselor. And then 9 years for an out-of-state private university. And I just recently came to Knox. And so I'm also a member of our regional organization here in Dallas with Zach. And we really have formed kind of a family within counselors. So if there's a school that you need to reach out to, and I know Ms. Geis and Mr. Fulton know this, but they're probably somewhere in Texas because there are quite a few of us. So let me just tell you, and I'm going to click over to my notes. So if you see my hands moving, I just want to tell you a little bit about Knox. 150 words. It's really hard for me. So really what we pride ourselves on at Knox is getting out and doing. Our students learn in the classroom, but it's all really about real world experiences for us, including research and creative work and service. We give every student a $2,000 grant just to do those things. And so we really want them to get out, to live, to learn, to become independent and adaptive students. And we have 1,000 of the most amazing creative students you will find anywhere in a true liberal arts environment. So.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Turn it over to Zach from the University of Michigan.
Hi, everyone. My name is Zach Lozano. I'm with the University of Michigan. I serve as a regional recruitment coordinator for U of M. So similar to Tony, I'm regionally based in the area that I recruit. That is Texas, all of Texas. I live in Dallas, but I cover the entire state. And so I'm really familiar with St. Andrews and the community down there in Austin. I've been in higher education for almost 7 years. We'll hit that mark early next year. I've been with Michigan for 2 of those 7 years. Prior to working for the University of Michigan, was an admissions counselor both on campus and regionally for a school just up the street from you all, UT Austin. Worked on campus as well as part of their Dallas team. So really familiar with working for the large public universities. It is similar to Tony, also part of the regional network in the Dallas-Fort Worth area that is with many other regional reps that cover the entire state and often make visits to Texas, or visits to Austin, so can certainly help connect you to those individuals. In terms of Michigan, in terms of what we have to offer and why Michigan is the place that you should consider in your college search. In Michigan, you are going to get the best of both worlds. You are going to get that small personal learning experience, but within the setting of a larger research university that still gives you all the experiences and resources that you could expect to find at a large research university. We have fantastic programs across the board in many different areas, but a lot of out-of-state students are drawn to our business, engineering, and musical theater programs. So definitely can't go wrong no matter what you choose to study at Michigan. We'll have a top-tier research experience as well, with many different research experiences available to all of our undergraduate students. And you're still able to go to football games every Saturday in the fall and watch a winning football team.
Awesome. He added that winning football team in there as well. Last but not least, I'll turn it over to Raymond for the University of Texas.
Hey, y'all. I'm Raymond Blakely with UT Austin. I serve as the Director of Undergraduate Recruitment, and I've been doing this work for 25 years. Over 25 years, in fact, and that's after a career where I was, I'll just say it this way, I was a cable guy for a year after I graduated. But the reality is I've been doing this work for 25 years, worked at both public and private institutions, both in the Midwest and in the South. And so have had a lot of experience in college admissions. I'm also involved outside of the admissions and recruitment area by serving as a third reader. And we'll talk about that a little bit later as we maybe in some of the questions. Also serve on our Hispanic Serving Steering Committee, which we're looking at how we can continue to expand services for students. I lead our recruitment network. And yes, y'all, I also produce a podcast. So lots of things going on here. But UT Austin is located right here in your hometown, capital city of Texas. We are a comprehensive research institution with over 51,000 students. And in 150 words or less, I guess the shortest would be why not, right? Why a student should consider. But students should consider UT Austin because it really brings together a diverse mix of both education and academics, as well as sports and extracurriculars together in an arguably America's coolest and most hip city. We've won a few football games as of late also. But also students will have access to a network of change makers all over the world who share that special characteristic of being a Longhorn.
Chad, I'm sorry, I messed up. I actually did the writing assignment. One of the things I didn't say in the intro, and I didn't read it. One of the things I didn't say in the intro is prior to coming to Colgate, I worked at a boarding school for about 8 years, and I was a 9th grade English teacher and a college counselor. So I love this prompt. I took it seriously. Can I read it? Is that okay?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. Here it goes. Remember, writing is a process, so I'm open to feedback on my essay here. Okay, proud tradition, bold ambition, This phrase really captures this particular moment at Colgate. We're building upon established academic traditions like the core curriculum, research opportunities, and off-campus study through initiatives in the sciences and in the arts. There are so many possibilities for Colgate students as they define their academic interests and pursuits. Colgate students love being students and love getting involved on campus. Colgate faculty are dedicated teachers, but they are also active scholars in their field. They bring that expertise to you, and they know your name. Classes are small. Students find home here. It's beautiful here, and it's amazing and inspiring to live in a beautiful place with 4 seasons. Finally, you are still an important part of the Colgate community after you graduate. You still have this community as an alum. So to conclude, wherever you go, go Gate. There you go. It's at 154 words. So I took 4 extra words.
Erin. Sorry, you're 4 over.
Oh, thank you. Thanks. I'm sorry. I missed that part of the intro. Thanks for letting me.
No, it's okay. No, excellent. That was amazing. Thank you so much. So everyone that's listening, you can see that we have some talented, very busy, and people with a broad range of experience joining us today. So we're so excited to have them with us. The first topic that we wanted to cover with everyone is just kind of behind the scenes. What happens once students hit submit on their application? That's obviously how you begin to learn the most about students. But if people just kind of want to unmute themselves and start talking about what happens after a student submits their application, and maybe is there an order in how you review? Are there things that you're really looking for? Kind of share with us from your perspective.
So everybody's going to rate on that first person. I'll jump out there. Well, the first thing to have is that if you hit submit, you have a sigh of relief, right, on your end, because you've done what a lot of students haven't done, and you've met a deadline, right? So that's a good thing. But in terms of the process, and of course, we all have different processes, and you all are starting this, learning about this, and so you'll know that there's a lot of different ways that we go about doing the work that we do. But we read files on a screen. We try to, first of all, match all of the different pieces of your application that come in. So it's important to submit them together. But in terms of reading, we read them on a screen. And I've been around long enough where we used to read them via paper and have a vote sheet, but we actually do read them. And in fact, many of us will read your applications 1, 2, and possibly even 3 times. And of course, that's what I do as a third reader. And I actually love, before jumping into other parts of the application, like your transcript, I love to read the essay first. I know that sounds crazy, but it's an introduction to you, the student, and it helps provide me with some context for what I'll discover from the transcript and other academic pieces. So I usually start off with the essay. And I think there's also this question of rigor and curriculum, and some of my colleagues may chime in on this. But how do we know schools like St. Andrews? How do we know, the type of courses that are offered at your school? I love this question because the reality is we work very closely with our partners at St. Andrews and at other schools, and they do a wonderful job of keeping us aware of lots of things that are happening, how we're perceived out there, some of the things that happen that we may not know about. So our colleagues are very helpful there, especially our colleagues at St. Andrews. Hint, hint, wink, wink. But we also know that one of the ways that we find out is through something called a school profile. And that really tells us a lot about the academics that are offered. So I'll stop there.
We read on a screen. We read remotely. I don't see the office for the month of January. It's snowing out. I basically hunker down and I read a lot of applications. It's my favorite time of year. Our process is very collaborative. So we have a team reading process. So I read an application with a colleague, with another staff member, and we sort of have a mini committee. And our work is, I think, to figure out how all of these pieces of your application work together to tell a story and sort of create this portrait of who you are. And I think that's really what holistic review is. You're going to hear that word a lot, but at Colgate, I think, we're looking for the things that are going to continue to strengthen our community. So academic preparation in terms of transcript, testing if you submit it, teacher recs, but also who you are as a person, because at Colgate, given our size, you're going to bring your whole self. So that's a little bit about how our process works. And I would just echo what Raymond says. Like, I read applications from the high schools I visit, from the different regions of the country I'm assigned to. So I have some understanding of context and community and high schools and those connections with counselors if I have a question or need more information to make sure I'm doing a thorough review of an application.
I think a big part, obviously, of the college admissions process is deadlines. And so all of our schools might be on different kind of admission schedules is what they're called. So for Belmont, we're rolling admissions. So whereas some schools are just starting to review applications, we've been reading applications for 2 months now. And so I think, from the front side, a student, when you submit your application, it might go into kind of a holding pattern, or for other schools, it might be read kind of immediately, and then you'll get a decision pretty quickly after that.
And our process is pretty similar to what both Raymond and Aaron shared already. Once you submit, it'll be read at least once or twice by admissions staff members. As the recruiter that works with Texas specifically, most of the time those apps are going to me. So it's very likely that as a student from Texas, that I'll be reading your application. There are a lot of apps from Texas, so I don't read all of them, just most of them. Again, goes through 2 reads, and because we do our decisions based on either early action or regular decision, typically won't hear back immediately after submitting your application. After submitting your application, you'll get access to a portal that you can monitor as often as you would like, but depending on when you apply, likely that portal won't be updated with the decision probably until either early in the spring of your senior year or towards the end of the spring of your senior year. And that's where you'll see your admissions decision. In terms of what we're reviewing, very similar to what's already been shared, transcripts. We want to review in the context of your high school. So certainly mindful of the school profile and the opportunities that have been made available to you at St. Andrews. And, we're certainly aware of that. Hence why we try to have the territory counselor read applications, because we're the ones that are most familiar with the high school, with the environment, and, what you have access to there within your specific setting.
Well, I will just chime in and bring the party to a wrap on this one. Yeah, sorry, my unmute button is not cooperating with me tonight. But at Knox, we started reading a few weeks ago because we are also an early decision school. So we have early action, early decision, and regular decision. And so that means that we have to kind of stagger that. Early decision basically means that you're applying in a format that if you're accepted to Knox, it's binding. So I wouldn't say that, and you have to withdraw your applications every place else. So basically you're saying, I'm coming to Knox if you admit me. We don't have a ton of those. And that just kind of stands to reason that we would not have a ton of those, because students still have a lot of information, a lot of schools they want to explore, even as they're applying to places. But I'm like Raymond. I start with the essay. I'm an English girl at heart. And so the essay to me kind of sets me up for the rest of what's going on. And so when students kind of share a piece of their life or a struggle that they have academically, or maybe a hooray moment that they've had academically, that, really to me kind of sets the tone for what I'm going to look at and expect within the transcript and other parts.
That's so interesting. I don't read the essay first, but I have this sense of anticipation. Like it's probably my favorite part, but it's like I sort of read some of the other information the application supplied, certainly where they go to high school, and then the activities, and then I'm like, what's this going to be about? So, but it's the best part, absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So you'll see a lot of different things that happen. And this is just a small gathering of what some offices do. And there are probably many more who do it different and the same. So I'm going to turn it back over to Elizabeth, who's going to get us into talking about testing.
Hey, I do just want to say, to Chad's point and to everything that you've heard, 2 words that you will hear us say all the time in our office is, Raymond already quoted it depends. There is really, and that applies to the testing landscape, and it may apply to you individually as a senior. You may submit scores to some schools and not to others because it depends on what your testing looks like in the context of their pool, unless they're not test optional. So all of these things, but you will hear us say it depends a lot. So please just be patient with us, because when we're saying it, we're not trying to dodge an answer. We're just really being honest that a lot of this process is really particular to schools and institutions and what their priorities and also what their procedures are and what their office has chosen as their process for things. We've heard the term early action. We've heard the term early decision, rolling admissions. But as Chad queued me up, I'm going to ask questions about testing. St. Andrews families, I think you have to realize the hilarity of me talking about standardized testing at all, because I was the high schooler that if the whole world had been through this test optional movement and more schools were test optional, I would have been shouting Tony's hooray moment, because testing was not my jam. And you all now live in a world where it's kind of more okay, at least for some schools, for testing to not be your thing. But I think the question that we're sitting with and that we try to help our students and families through is, hey, where is this going? So this is your crystal ball moment, college admissions folks. Where do you think this question of test optional is going? Some of you may know. Some of you may be at institutions that were test optional before COVID cool to be test optional. Some of you may be in a trial period that's about to kind of expire, so to speak. What are the conversations? And then the looming question, I think for a lot of students and families is test optional really test optional? Or are colleges going to read into me not submitting test scores in a way that might negatively affect me, maybe more than even a lowish score? So that's a lot. I also have to say, I feel like I talk about standardized testing more now in a test optional world than I did in almost 20 years of work leading up to this. So here we are. We've opened the Pandora's box of standardized testing. Maybe a little bit about where things are at your institution, as much as you can share. If they're changing, what's the conversation? And then that question of, is test optional really test optional?
Okay, I'll start this one off if that's okay with everybody. So we are a test optional school, and that is test optional across the board. So it's test optional for admission. It's test optional for scholarships. And really, honestly, even when a student submits an SAT or ACT score, I'm held to look for a threshold, right? But really what we're far more concerned with is the day-to-day effort that you're putting in, what you took, did you challenge yourself? And of course, the great thing about Texas students, you may not feel this way right now, but the 4x4 that Texas schools are held to, and St. Andrews exceeding that, and the fact that you took foreign language. Actually, in the state of Illinois, foreign language is not required for graduation. So Texas students in a lot of ways have been set up, whether it's against their will or not, for success in a lot of other ways besides just a test score. Philosophically, I do believe that test optional is here to stay. My previous institution actually went test blind. And what that means is even if you send us, even if you sent them a score, they don't look at it. There's no way for the reader to look at it. It just kind of sits there in no man's land, and we don't see that. But, I think as Ms. Guy said, it depends, and it's incumbent on students to understand school by school by school. What do they mean? What are they looking for? And just to have those honest conversations. It never hurts to ask. And I often ask students, well, what does your GPA look like? Did you take AP? Did you take honors? And help them kind of decide if submitting a score is going to help them, or is it going to hurt them, or is it just going to be a push?
Yeah, I think this is such a institutional by institutional decision. It depends. It rings true for a lot of admissions, but definitely test scores. For Belmont, we're test optional. We started being test optional during COVID, so we weren't an early adopter, but have no intention to not be test optional. So test optional is here to stay. And I agree with Tony. I think you'll see that a lot, at least at a lot of private schools that can do that. For Belmont, we are kind of a combination of test blind and test optional, in that a test score can absolutely never hurt a student. So whether or not you submit the score or not, if you do submit the score, the student's application is reviewed for admission and scholarship with and without the test score. And especially for scholarship, basically the scholarship's figured out with that test score and without the test score, and whatever the higher amount is what we'll give the student. So that's the way we operate. Not the only school to do that, but some schools that's not the case. And so it's just really important to reach out to your counselor. That's why we're here, is to answer those questions for you. And websites can be confusing, so don't ever hesitate to reach out to ask those questions. But it depends. It's definitely the case with test optional.
I appreciate what my colleagues have shared. I'll share something very quickly. I think one of the biggest things to note is that it depends. We're going to keep saying that, but there are so many different ways of looking at this. And from our perspective, we didn't even use the term test optional because it was so muddied in so many different ways. So we just said we're not requiring the test. So in some ways and so that means we didn't require it for admissions or for scholarship purposes. And in terms of where I think it's going, I don't think it's impacted from an institutional standpoint. The quality and success rates of our students, they still retain at high rates. They still graduate at high rates. We have noticed that maybe there's a higher percentage of students that that are not submitting scores. But my personal, and the way that we try to encourage our counselors to share, is that students should take a standardized exam if they have the ability to do that. I love the term COVID cool. COVID made it cool to be test optional. Elizabeth, I'm going to remember that. That's the first time I've heard it. I think that's really what happened. But the reality of it is that we now have, in many schools, have a tremendous amount of data that shows that students can be successful without submitting test scores. We've never been a school, and I'm speaking specifically for the University of Texas at Austin, we've never been a school that has leaned into the test in terms of it's going to be a negative for a student. It's always only been a plus factor. And so and again, it's not required. A great student is a great student is a great student. And in fact, if I can be honest with you, I think it's made a lot of our admissions colleagues, maybe both at UT Austin and other places that don't require the test, made us work a lot harder to do exactly what we say we're going to do, and that's do holistic admissions. I'll stop there because I feel like I'm getting on a soapbox.
Cool, but I think to that point, when I review an application, I'm always looking for a reason to admit a student. And frankly, I don't have time to wonder why a student didn't submit testing. We are really, truly test optional. And I think for me, it's one data point that I don't have among many. So I say that just don't be deterred or discouraged if you sit for an exam, and you should, Raymond, I agree, absolutely. Because there are so many, I think there's so many other pieces of data that we'll look at that will go into that holistic review. At Colgate, we will be test optional for the next several admission cycles because I think we're trying to figure out how to answer that question that you posed, Elizabeth, in terms of what the future is going to look like. I think we want some more time to gather more information and just see what the landscape is going to be like. But we will be test optional it would be students entering in fall 2027. So I believe that's the 9th grade cohort right now, some of whom are here tonight. And again, test optional, test blind, we are test optional. So be intentional, be thoughtful, because we're not test blind. If you do submit your scores, they do become a piece of the data that we'll review. So.
And for Michigan, we are test flexible, which is just another term to throw into your vocabulary. And basically what that means is that welcome to send us SAT and ACT scores, but no requirement. We don't give a preference for those who submit one over those who choose not to. We're not going to wonder why you didn't submit that information. That's why we are test flexible, because we want to give you the option to decide if that's information you want us to consider. But similar to what others have shared, if you provide that information, then it will be considered. And if you feel like that's information that you want considered with your application when that time comes, by all means, feel free to send it in. That's what I'm telling seniors right now, because we are test flexible for them. We haven't even decided what our testing policy will be for current juniors. So for those of you who are 9th and 10th graders, unfortunately don't have a concrete answer for you yet either. We've basically, since COVID hit, have decided on a year-by-year basis what our testing policy is going to be. Probably won't have a definitive answer of what it'll look like for current juniors until sometime in the spring of next year. So sophomores and 9th graders, probably be a couple more years before we know exactly what our testing policy will be for you all. But just know that for the last few years, we have been test flexible. And that means that our prospective students also have the option of sending us AP or IB exam scores in place of, or in addition to, SAT and ACT scores if they'd rather that information be considered.
I just want to add too that the test scores aren't bad either, and I think that, I hope you heard that from several of the speakers. Like, if you have a good score, like, be proud of that, and that does help an application, right? So I think it's great to try, but I think for all of us, it can't hurt you.
And hopefully this helps, sophomores, if you're listening, you just took the PSAT. And part of the reason why we're going to still keep that requirement at St. Andrews is because we do want to offer you the opportunity to potentially have this as a really strong, proud point of your application, if that applies to you. And it'll apply to plenty of St. Andrews students. But I really appreciate the thoughts from our college admissions colleagues about where their schools are now, where they might be going, and especially the point of, if we're really doing holistic review, which all of these institutions do, you're way more than just your numbers, St. Andrews students. And that's always been true. But I think especially now, as sometimes those numbers aren't there. So what else is? And I think that's the thing, that the test optional or test flexible, maybe I'll come up with a new term for it for some school. But that allows schools to do that, to look really closely at every part that's there. Okay, Chad, over to you.
Excellent. And now we're going to move on to what are colleges really looking for as 9th and 10th graders being the target audience for tonight's webinar. And we often get a lot of questions from parents and students about what really matters. Are there exact things that I should be doing, whether it's extracurricular activities or classes that I should be taking? So it might be helpful for them to hear what are the things that really stand out in a good way when you're reading an application. And then maybe on the flip side of that, what are some things that you can do that maybe you stand out in a negative way for when you guys are reading applications?
As I said earlier, at Michigan, we're reviewing you in the context of your learning environment. So I think one of the first things that you can do, especially early on in your high school career, to help yourself stand out, is take advantage of the courses that are offered to you at St. Andrews. We have access to that school profile. We're very familiar with St. Andrews, being the recruiter in Texas, very familiar with the school. And so we know what opportunities are available to you. And so as you start selecting those courses, especially going into that junior and senior year, find ways to challenge yourself based on what St. Andrews offers you and what they are able to, based on whatever limits they might have. Since some schools do have limitations in terms of honors or AP classes that you can take each year, but find ways to maximize that rigor. That way you're showing us that you have the potential to be successful at a school like Michigan, and that you can be successful in college coursework. But beyond that, also finding ways to be a leader within your community, be that your high school community, the community you reside in, or maybe even other groups beyond your high school and even the city of Austin. Finding ways to be a leader, getting involved in those areas that you're passionate about, and what type of perspectives are you going to bring to our campus? That's another thing that we're looking at to see how you can enhance the learning environment at Michigan. What you're going to bring to our campus. Are you going to be somebody that gets involved, that's going to be a leader at Michigan and really contribute to our campus community? So those are all the things that we're looking at, in a sense, from academics to extracurricular involvement to the diverse perspectives that our students are bringing. There really isn't one particular type of student we're looking for. There isn't a particular set of extracurricular activities or particular set of classes that you have to take that are going to guarantee admission to Michigan. But we just hope that you are finding ways to take advantage of what's available to you, the things that, and then areas that you're passionate about, so that you can ultimately be a contributor to the Michigan community.
Slam dunk, Zach. I think you spoke for, I know you spoke for Texas, so just insert Texas to what he said.
Excellent. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Aaron. Sorry. I didn't know if you were going to say anything.
I was going to say, I mean, what we're looking for is a student who's going to be a good fit, and you're looking for a college that's going to be a good fit. So I was sort of thinking about this question and thinking about where you're at in the process. And right now, academic preparation is so important, preparing for college. We don't expect you to come to Colgate or any of our schools having it all figured out, right? So sometimes I read an application and a student's like, this is what I hope to do. And that's helpful. It tells me about the aspirations and goals of that student, but it could change. So sometimes I'm like, okay, well, what has a student done, like even before kind of sort of defining these next steps for themselves? So I think a really good thing to do is to reflect on what you're interested in, what you're good at, how do you learn best, how do you want to learn, right? And so really being thoughtful about those things, like in 9th and 10th grade and throughout high school, it's going to allow you to really develop this criteria, and you'll be able to identify schools that are a good fit. And then I think that will resonate on our side of the desk when we review an application. So what are colleges looking for? We're looking for a student who would be a good fit.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And then I'm going to turn it back over to Elizabeth again, who's going to kind of start to begin to wrap us up a little bit, but we still have one more topic to cover.
We do. And to anybody that's listening, if you have lingering or pressing questions, drop them in the Q&A. This is your cue that we will wrap up after this next segment. Okay, so this is our rapid fire section. I don't know why I got the fun one this year. Okay, We have a few questions. First one, and the caveat to that is if you answer yes to this one, I'm also going to ask you to define the term for the audience. So, college admissions friends, does demonstrated interest play a role in your process? Raise your hand if demonstrated interest plays a role in your application review process. Wow, this might be a first. Okay, Chad or I could define demonstrated interest, but does anybody else want to do it? Maybe you've worked at another institution where it did play a role. I see some nods to that. You don't have to name the institution, but does anyone want to speak from?
Sure. Yeah, previous institution, but essentially a weight is given to students who have done a number of activities, we used to call them, or self-directed, self-initiated activities that may include things like campus visits, attending programs, contacts with their admission counselor, which gets real crazy sometimes for them then. But there are points and an advantage associated with that. I am very happy not to be doing that any longer, because some people really felt as if I'm just going to email you every day. And that's too much, because I want to be reading about read all the wonderful applications and do the campus visits and enjoy that. But no, that's what it means. Basically assigning some type of a value to the number and the quality of self-initiated activities as you're showing interest at a specific institution.
Yeah, thanks so much. And St. Andrews students and families, I will say that I feel like in the past 5 to 7 years, colleges have become more transparent through the admissions process about whether they do or don't have a value for demonstrated interest. There are some schools where you hop on their website and it's right there that they really do. And so as you're looking to prioritize how you connect with schools, and I think the challenge for students is we talk so much about being earnest and being true to yourself. And sometimes excessive demonstrated interest just feels fake to students. So I'll offer a little thank you to all of you for saying, hey, just connect with us when you need to connect with us to learn something, but you don't get an extra point for emailing your admissions rep every day. In fact, that might be a way to stand out in a negative way, as Chad asked earlier for that. Okay. You guys might also be united on this.
Guys.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt, but to that point, I think that a lot of schools, particularly private schools, I can't speak for everybody, but there's an informal level of demonstrated interest. And I think that holds some value in that when special opportunities pop up, or I read about something, or a particular professor is working on something that I know a student is interested in, because we talked, then I'm able to connect them. So to me, it's not like a keeping score type of thing, but it's just a savvy practice to keep in touch with your admission counselor, so that, and help them get to know you, so that you can use them as kind of your networking connection within the university or the college. So.
Yeah, thank you. I love that. And St. Andrews students, we will always say, if a school that you're interested in is coming to St. Andrews for a visit, come and meet with them. You will learn more. Also, then one of these awesome humans might be reading your application, and they will likely remember sitting around a coffee table in our office or in the chapel for some larger visits. They might remember you, and you just come to life, which may not add a value point to your application, but gosh, how nice to feel like this is somebody who maybe you've connected with. Okay. Parents, this is the question you're probably loving that I'm about to ask, because this is what maybe you have been telling your student for years. So here's the question. Do you look at freshman grades? Raise your hand if you look at freshman grades. Okay, students, we're seeing that. I thought this one would be unanimous. I think sometimes students think maybe they get a warm-up year. I think that most colleges would also say, we do understand that there's a growth trajectory. In fact, we hope that there is. Freshmen, it's also not great to peak your freshman year and then have a decline for the rest of the years. That's sending the wrong message too. But all 4 years of your grades are on your St. Andrews transcript, each semester and each year-end grade. Sometimes there's an interesting story there that gets told, but they're on your transcript. So these schools are not alone in that they do look at your freshman year grades. You guys already spoke to APs. I'm going to pull up a question that has been posed in the Q&A, which is a really great one. The question is, I frequently hear that colleges are looking for well-rounded students. However, then I hear that the truth is that colleges are looking for a well-rounded student body, which implies that the students are not well-rounded, but rather as a whole, the whole student body becomes well-rounded. Which is true? And I don't know if it's an either or. Who wants to jump in? Maybe hear from a few people.
Yeah, I was going to mention this at the application when we were talking about applications, right? So this really boils down to the generalist versus the specialist, right? A resume that's dove in deep, a student that's dove in deep into one particular area versus kind of spread out and you know, experience a lot of different things. And there's not a right answer. We need both of those people, right? We need people that are a good team player, and then we also need students that are going to be the leader. And you know, I would say it's all about being your authentic self. Like if you're super passionate about something and that your whole high school career is about volunteering, then that's not a knock on you, or you know, that's something that's who you are, and we want that kind of person. So at least for Belmont, but really, I think in general, we need everyone, and so there's not a right answer. It's more important to be who you are.
Okay, well, I'll also chime in on this. And being the smallest college on the panel, you know, that kind of inherently lends itself to kind of a closer examination of each student and what they're, I like in a first year class to kind of a potluck, right? And no, of course it's a food analogy, y'all, come on. But you know, no two dishes are the same, no two students are the same. And so I don't think that those things are mutually exclusive. I think that Knox, you know, for example, is a blend of students who are very artistic, but some are very athletic, and some really love community service, and some, you know, and that's what our students love about it. And so, but no matter if you go to a school with 1,000 people or a school with 50,000 people, there are a little bit of everything everywhere. And so, but I don't think that those two terms are mutually exclusive. And I think that, you know, be you. If you're the potato salad, be the potato salad. You know, if you're the charcuterie board, be the charcuterie board. You know, because that's who you are, and the right school is going to value that.
This is what happens when we host a panel around dinner time. We're all thinking of our food analogies. Okay, so here's another Q&A, and this gets a little bit to this, but I think it's also a little bit to Chad's question previously about, like, are there certain things I have to kind of check off? So if it's clear that a student's not going to be a college level athlete, how important is sports participation? Is 1 year on a varsity team enough? I think the other thing I would add in, if a student's maybe not going to keep pursuing the arts in college, is it okay that after sophomore year and they've completed our requirement, they switch gears and say, I'm going to add more science to my schedule? Or I think it is a little bit that question, like if I stop something, maybe that's the question that's really like, if I stop something and shift and give my time to something else, is that okay?
Yes. I think that one of the things I'm thinking about when we sort of talk about some of the things beyond a student's, academic preparation is you don't have to hold a leadership position to be a leader. Like when I think about what I'm asked to do, I'm really asked to sort of tease out the personality and the characteristics that make that student who they are. They're not a list of activities, but what do those activities tell me about the student in terms of their interests and in terms of just sort of, again, who they are as a person. So I say that too, just again, this will come down the line, but one thing I think sometimes students, make sure you represent the thing on your application that you sign up for, but also the things you don't necessarily sign up for, right? Do you have responsibilities to your family or your community? Do you have a part-time job? Do you have an interest or hobby that you've worked on since, the beginning of high school? Because I liked what Tony was saying in terms of sort of being a potluck, again, the food reference, but we want you to bring your whole self. And really we're thinking about who is this person going to be? What are they going to be able to share, and how are we going to be able to learn from them?
Yeah, and I'll just add, if sports is what you're passionate about, if that's what you enjoy being involved with in high school, then by all means, feel free to devote your free time to that. I mean, even if you're not planning on being a D1 athlete, if that is your, the thing that where you get your outlet, where your best friends are, where you're getting leadership roles, where you're getting transferable skills that can still be applied to other areas of your life in high school and once you get to college, by all means, feel free to participate in those things. If you aren't super athletic and you realize sports isn't your thing, it's also okay to, leave that activity and take up other things that you would think are worthwhile and a better use of your time and your energy. But I think the important takeaway here is find the areas that you are passionate about, that you want to get involved with, and make sure that you are using that time wisely to get involved in those things that you think are going to be beneficial to you, not only just in terms of showing your leadership and your involvement, but also what you're getting out of it in terms of long-term outcomes.
Okay, final question that's been posed in the Q&A, but that I think I can wrap into. Well, I can wrap that y'all can wrap in to our bigger final question, which is just advice for our 9th and 10th graders and their families as they approach this process and the rest of high school. And the question that was posed is, I think, the thing that stirs up fear in this process, which is, I had the 4.0 GPA, I had the awesome test score, I had a resume that would make a lot of us adults in the room feel incredibly inadequate in our lives. And still, I was rejected from a lot of schools. What's the advice to that as we just help our students and families think about how to approach this process in general, where we at St. Andrews focus on so many of the things that you just said? It's all about the fit. We're also a community that says, dream big, go for those reaches. Like I say this all the time, and I said it to a group of prospective parents today. I don't really want to be part of an adult community that is raising humans that only play it safe in the world. I don't think that the world ever got changed for the better when we all just played it safe or we kept our mouths shut. So part of what we see, St. Andrews students and families, is part of our job is to help you dream and to help you go for those and to be here when your dreams didn't manifest the way that you thought they would. But how do we help our families and our students step into that sort of potentially scary world where even if you do all the right things, I don't know what's in that right quotation, it may still not unfold in the way that you thought your path was going to? What's the way to even still embrace and approach high school and the college process with that in mind?
Well, first of all, you got to get some great advice from your college counselor, like what you just gave. Because the reality is, in life, there are going to be wins and losses, and it's your responsibility to turn those losses into lessons. Here's the part that many schools want to say, and that is that every school has its own priorities. They have their own values and goals that they're trying to meet. And guess what? A lot of this has nothing to do with your student, nothing to do with the student. You could have, and I say this every year, there are many students who are talented, who are just phenomenal students that will not gain admission to the University of Texas, but it has nothing to do with their abilities or with anything that they could have controlled. It's just a lot of realities that you're not aware of. There's space. There are programs that are overpopulated. There are programs where we're really trying to grow. There are areas. I mean, there's so many different factors that have nothing to do with the application that you submit. But I can guarantee you that if you got a 4.0, as this question says, 4+ GPA and an awesome test score, you can go to college, and you can go to a great college. There's something for you, but it may not always turn out the way that you want it to turn out. And that's just the reality of college admissions, of holistic review. And so I love this question because it really speaks to that taking on of advice. Get out there, reach for the stars, take the risk that you want to take, or and take good counsel on those risks. But by all means, please don't stop reaching, because that's a part of the whole experience. I'm reaching right now in different ways. And adults, we're always putting ourselves at a point where we may potentially be denied something. But it's not about the denial, it's about the experience and what we learn from it. So thank you for this question, whoever posted it, Cooper J. But it is really, it's a real question that a lot of people have.
Raymond, you were making me think of phone calls I have after decision release when a student reaches out and says, can I get feedback on my application? What did I do wrong? Nothing. I think our decisions are a reflection. we're a selective institution. We've seen a dramatic increase in applications. Our acceptance rate has gone down. And I try to basically assure a student, and it's true, it's the decisions are often a reflection of, again, certain priorities and just the nature of the pool as well. So don't be deterred. And I think the other thing I would say as well is it can be a hard process, and it's hard to get those decisions, but it's really important to put yourself out there and just remember your team and never worry alone. That was sort of the motto at the school we used to work at, is just to never worry alone. If there's something on your mind, you have people here. It's my job to answer questions about Colgate and about financial aid or admission. So please reach out to us. And we know that might seem scary, or I hope we're not intimidating. We've spent about an hour here together now in this webinar, but again, part of our job is to sort of bring you into that conversation so that you can ask the questions and advocate for what you need.
Maybe that's our unwritten motto too, Erin, because we say that a lot. We're like, just reply to the email. We're going to help you. We're going to support you. Okay, other bits of advice as we wrap up, or additional thoughts on this question? What's the hope for our 9th and 10th graders and their parents?
Right. I just hope the theme is fit, right? Like, at the end of the day, this process is supposed to help you find a place that fits what you want and how you'll flourish, right? Like, that's our goal, is for you to flourish for the next 4 years once you graduate high school. And so, that can be I think that process is what you make it, right? That can be a really fun and exciting process. Like, especially starting early, visiting schools, like you'll get the feel, and we want you to get the feel. Some schools you're gonna walk on and say, this isn't it. And that's good, because that's one less school to look at. And then just vice versa, you'll finally walk onto that campus and just know that's where you hope to be. And so enjoy the process, as intimidating as it may sound, because at the end of the day, we're all here, both from your side, from Mr. Fulton and Ms. Geis, to our side, that we want you to find the best fit for yourself.
Okay. We may have come to the end of our advice, and we just want to thank these amazing professionals who we have the honor of working with year after year, and students and families. This just once again is a taste of the people who are on the other side, working with you and guiding you through this process at their institutions. And we are so lucky to work with them. Thank you so much for spending time with us this evening, giving up even more of your day to be on this webinar with us. Families, you will receive a recording of this webinar that you can go back and listen to and pick up on those nuggets of advice. And also, please contact us if you have additional questions or want to connect with us about what you are thinking about, or just kind of have a conversation. Elizabeth and I always have an open door policy. So thank you so much for spending your evening with us, and have a great week.